We are back on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk, 1180. Our guest by phone, Joe Klein, author of the UN's Global Deception, the UN's Stealth Assault on America's Freedom and Lethal Engagement, Barack Hussein Obama, the UN, and Radical Islam. Joe, before the break, you were talking about Iran and Venezuela. That's a unreported story.
Well, I mean, there are very disturbing developments all over Latin America, the most disturbing of which is this assistance that Iran has been providing Venezuela in building missile bases, and the very real risk that Iran will be bringing in its own intermediate-range missiles, and of course, should get a nuclear bomb, being able to eventually weaponize those missiles with a nuclear bomb, and of course, we're right in the sights of that. Now, you know, back in 1962, President John Kennedy drew that line in the sand, and he risked a real confrontation with the Soviet Union by instituting a blockade around Cuba to keep out the missiles at that time, and he faced them down. Obama should at least be saying something very firm that this is not going to be acceptable in our backyard, period. He hasn't done that. We also, there's evidence that, among all of the various illegal aliens coming across our southern border, there's also could be some Hezbollah terrorists or friends of the Hezbollah terrorists, because there's evidence that Hezbollah which is of course financed by Iran, has been setting up teams with and relationships with the Mexican drug cartels. And so we're seeing that on our southern border, and instead of being concerned about that, what does the Obama administration do? They go after the state of Arizona for simply trying to help the immigration law enforcement in the state of Arizona. Instead of welcoming that assistance, the Obama Justice Department goes after and sues the state of Arizona. So, we just see over and over again misplaced priorities, giving Iran mixed signals, and time is ticking away here. And, the bottom line is Israel's going to do what it thinks it has to do. I just came back from a trip to Israel, and I visited, among other things that I was able to do, I visited a IDF base, their Air Force base in the south of Israel, in the Negev. And, obviously they weren't going to say anything about what they were planning to do, but they were conducting a lot of trials of flights, test flights every day, and they have advanced F-16s, refueling capabilities. I think that if Israel believes it has no choice, it's going to do what it thinks it has to do to protect itself.
Well,
Obama may have to follow.
Sure. For the last 2 years on this show, I've been saying that it's just a question of time before Israel does it, because I don't think we will. And, we've had all kinds of little signs, like, the helicopter crash about a year and a half ago in Romania, Bulgaria area, which looks a lot like Tehran as far as the topography. So it's just a question of time before Israel does something.
And we saw what they did in respect to Syria back in 2007 to take out that nuclear reactor, and of course back in 1981 with Iraq. Israel is determined, and I really picked this up from so many conversations there, not only with soldiers but just with Israeli people. They're united in one thing, that they're going to protect the Jewish state at all costs, because they know the alternative would be to go back to the Holocaust and to the pogroms and the sad history of persecution. That's why there is a Jewish state in the Holy Land, the ancient homeland of the Jewish people, and they're going to do what they have to do. And if Iran represents an existential threat to them, they're going to take out the Iranian facilities that pose that threat. And remember, we're dealing with madmen running the Iranian regime. We're dealing with the Ayatollah Khamenei, who thinks he's the deputy on earth of the 12th Imam. Ahmadinejad also thinks he has a direct pipeline to this 12th Imam, who's hiding in a well, supposedly, and waiting to come out and reemerge on earth. And the way to hasten his arrival, Imam's arrival, is to destroy the little Satan, which is Israel, and then the big Satan, which is the United States. They have said this over and over again.
Yeah,
How Obama thinks he can deal rationally with madmen like that, and looking at history in negotiations that failed with other madmen like Adolf Hitler, it's just beyond me.
Yeah, and history's full of people like this that have and haven't been dealt with.
That's why I called my book Lethal Engagement, because engagement is the word that the Obama administration used right at the outset to describe its policy toward Iran, toward Syria, we saw where that's going, and toward the whole Muslim world, as exemplified in his Cairo 2009 speech, where he essentially apologized for past transgressions of the West and said that he was going to make amends, and that's been his policy ever since with the Muslim world, including encouraging the Muslim Brotherhood in its efforts to take over in Egypt. So it's lethal engagement, because lethal is what's going to happen if we just allow these crazy regimes, particularly Iran, to get their way.
Exactly. We're having a conversation with Joe Klein, author of Lethal Engagement, Barack Hussein Obama, the UN, and Radical Islam.
Joe, if Iran was to launch any type of major attack on Israel, are there any type of warning systems in place or defense mechanisms to protect the population?
Well, Israel's definitely developing that, and how advanced they are, I really can't say. Of course, we've seen in the last few days a pretty good success rate of their Iron Dome defenses in the south. They've had approximately an 80% success rate against rockets, over 300 of which have been launched from Gaza toward major population centers like Beersheba in the south of Israel. My understanding is that they have other defense systems. How far along they are, I really am not sure. But given the way the Israeli military has traditionally done its planning, they think of just about every contingency. And so, they're going to have to expect, and they said that they would expect some tragic casualties. I think they have factored in ways to mitigate that should the attack occur. And they may also include in their planning enough offensive capability to neutralize some of these launching facilities, so that they won't be able to fire some of these rockets. And we know that there's also the threat from Hezbollah in Lebanon, and they have amassed many thousands of rockets. But I think that the Israelis have been able to sense pretty much where a lot of those are located, and I've got to believe they factored into their calculations ways to try to neutralize that.
So, Joe, if Israel launches an attack on Iran to destroy those nuclear capability situations, what's going to happen next from the surrounding countries to Israel?
Well, I mean, if Iran carries out its threats, you're going to see a combination of direct attacks on what, not only against Israel, but also on what Iran perceives as Israel's allies, possibly some of the Gulf states. Of course, they've threatened attacks against U.S. Military assets, closing of the Straits of Hormuz. And then, of course, they'll use their terrorist surrogates like Hezbollah and Hamas and the Islamic Jihad, to also wreak havoc, not only in the region, but you might see it in Europe, and as we talked about earlier, even in this hemisphere through the Hezbollah channel.
Yeah, Joe,
so, there will definitely be aftershocks. There will be blowbacks, but the question is,
we're gonna have to leave it at that. We have to have you come back, though, definitely.
Okay, I would enjoy coming back.
Thank you. We'll see you in 167 hours on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.